Welcome parents to Hamilton High School's Parent Presentation Series. We started these parent presentations about 4 years ago because we saw there was a need to provide some support services to parents in our community and within our school. These parent presentations provide a wide range of topics. We have expert speakers that talk about social media, communication, mental health issues, all the areas that teens are going through, and to educate parents on what they can do, resources they can obtain, and just support services. We also have a student educational series at the same time in the evening, so you can bring your child with you and they will go to a separate classroom and they will get education on the same topic. Most teachers give extra credit, but your child will always get 2 volunteer hours for every session they attend. And at Hamilton, we also have support groups that the social workers run. We have support groups for anxiety, depression, and self-harm. We have groups for grief, substance abuse, anger management, and we also provide one-on-one support to students, as well as meet with parents if there's issues you might be struggling with and need some professional guidance. You can come and meet with us. And so at Hamilton, we provide a great deal of services. Please contact us if you need any additional support, or we can sit down and talk about ways that we can help you and your child be successful during these high school years. Thank you so much for coming to our presentations, and these presentations, as you can see, are videotaped and will be available 2 weeks after every presentation, along with the PowerPoint and any other materials. We will have them on our website. So thank you and have a great day.
I'm not used to using PowerPoints a whole lot. After college, I kind of vowed to try to stay away from them because my professors didn't do a great job. They're just kind of boring and monotonous and reading off of PowerPoints. So I will try to not do that. And so I'm going
She wants to keep it away from.
I just need to be able to see it. All right. Okay. And so that's a little new to me. Usually I'm a whiteboard person. I have a big whiteboard in my office, and I'm a visual, and I like to do things there. So this is a little new format for me, relying on a PowerPoint. So be patient with me. I like my discussions to be open-ended. I don't want to just be a lecturer up here, again, mimicking my college professors, or some of them. Some of them are fantastic. So please, questions in the middle, interrupt me, raise your hand. I really want it to be more of a dialogue instead of a lecture. And so it's enjoyable for everybody. If there are specific questions you have tonight, I'm hoping at the end we'll have plenty of time to do question and answer. And we'll go from there. Tell you a little bit about myself, both professionally and personally. Professionally, I've been doing counseling for about 12 years, and I specialize in working with adolescents and their parents. I work with addictions, and then marriage and relationships issues are predominantly what I work with. I do see general mental health issues such as depression and anxiety and all of that as well. But my 2 big groups that I love to work with are teenagers and then those struggling with addictions. And sometimes they go hand in hand. Sometimes teenagers drive us to addictive behaviors as parents. And so that sometimes I get it all in one. And they cause relationships problems somewhat. And so I get some marriage counseling along with working with adolescents and their parents. Personally, I have 2 adolescents myself. I have a 14-year-old girl and a 13-year-old girl, and then a 9-year-old son. So I'm in the process of also raising and parenting my own teenage girls and all that they're going through, being close in age, and one being in junior high, one being a freshman. And so if you have that age group, I can empathize with you on the hard part, but also the amazing fun that I have with my kids, and they're good people to be around. I've also worked in residential treatment centers for adolescents, those struggling with pretty severe behavioral mental health issues, and where they lived full-time for several months at a time, and worked in that capacity as well with teenagers. So I've been working with teenagers for a long time. All right, let me see here. Two of the resources I'll use, predominantly one will be this lecture, the other one will be the next lecture next month. The first book is a book that I really recommend to any parent that I work with. And as a therapist, I'm kind of a big, what we call bibliotherapy therapist. I like my clients to do their own reading and their own educating themselves outside of the office. And reading some books that have been written on this topic is a good source. Doesn't mean that everything that this author, particularly in Why Do They Act That Way, that's the one we're going to be covering most of the content today. And again, next time, I'll probably get into the 5 love languages a little bit for adolescents when we're talking about self-esteem and whatnot. But I would encourage this resource for any parent of adolescents. It's a really good resource to give us the basics of the brain that we'll go over some tonight, communication, and a lot of topics that are really helpful. So a lot of the information will come from there, as well as myself and working with just the teens that I've worked with and the parents and what I've found. So the 3 main areas of the brain that we're going to focus on tonight, I'm going to go over the first part kind of quickly. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't know all the ins and outs of the human brain because it's very complicated, but it is fascinating, and there are some key parts to, I think, really understanding adolescence. Because if we don't, we're going to get a lot more frustrated because our teenagers can be really frustrating. And the 3 areas are the brain stem, the limbic brain or the limbic system, and the cortex. Before we go any further, any questions right out that you want to make sure you get answered tonight, and I hopefully then will work those answers into the presentation. But did anybody come in with any specific questions about communicating with teens so I can be aware of as I'm talking to try to answer? I want to make sure we do that.
How to break their silence.
Okay. I'm going to write just my self-notes so I remember how to break their silence. And their one-word answers. How was school today? What do we get? Fine. Good. Crappy. I don't know. That's a good question. And universal that we all struggle with. Excellent. Any other specific questions in communicating with your teen or student or...
How to respond to the eye rolls.
How to respond to eye rolls is the question. Okay, I'm just going to make a note, eye rolls. Excellent question. There's a couple different ways we can do that, isn't there? Some are more effective than others.
The other one is I know.
I know, they do. They know everything. So it's really hard to argue with a teenager because they are omniscient and they do know all things. So we're at a disadvantage there. Absolutely. So good. And knowing everything. Any other questions or topics?
How to make them aware of how they're coming across, even if that's not their intention.
Awareness. Oh, there you go. Of their actions. Okay, good. Absolutely. So the question there was, how do we know to help them become aware of how they're coming across to us? That's a difficult one, but a great question or a good topic.
As soon as you ask that question, I immediately picture my son with his earbuds in, getting something to eat out of the fridge, and I'm trying to talk to him. And you don't know if he can hear you or not because you don't know how loud the music is that's playing in his ears. And then he gets all mad that I ask him to take the earbuds out, you know, because I'm interrupting what his agenda.
Right.
And that's exactly, he's like, I can hear you. And I'm like, well, I don't know that, and it doesn't appear that you can.
Right.
So you have to show me that you can hear. And the old-fashioned way is eye-to-eye contact. So
Yeah, just text him.
That's what I picture when you ask that.
Text him, he'll get it. Send him a message on Instagram and he'll respond probably a lot quicker.
My question is, it's like, I know it's, you know, obviously communication is important. And if he wants to talk to you, that's great. And you're going to be there and listen to him and talk. But it's hard to do that sometimes if something just happened where they were completely rude to my wife or something. Like he tells, you know, screw this or F off and stuff.
No.
And he says, Dad, come here, I want to talk to you. At that point, I don't really want to talk to him.
Right.
And I would think, well, F you too? Is this, you know, you can't treat her like that. She's crying, but now you want to talk to me? And that's really tough because it's like, I want to be there for him and listen to his problems because he's got a problem. But at the same time, it's like, how do I can't give him discipline at the same time.
Right. So I'm going to summarize that for the video. How to respond to disrespectful behavior towards one parent when they then now want to talk to you after they've just disrespected the other. And how do you be that mediator when you really want to just pound them and you can't? And so, or you shouldn't. I wouldn't do that. Great question.
So support associated with at what time and what limit do we understand to communicate to them nicely and then shift to a parently way of sternly telling them that this is it and you can't go ahead with the bad behavior.
Okay, so good. How do we balance being kind and nice with setting clear boundaries and clear limits to their behaviors? Does that kind of sum that up? So first we got respect. That first question kind of thought, and then balance of kindness and boundaries, I'm going to say, just for myself here. Okay, excellent. Really good questions. So my goal then tonight will be to get to each one of these. And if we get too far into where it's getting close, I'll just kind of stop the lecture and focus more on these, because I think these are the more important things which you've came to get.
Well, the problem is to reach them. Their mind is totally absent because of, and even if I make eye contact, if I make sure, are you there? Do you hear me? Do you listen to me? The still is, okay, then whatever is communicated a few seconds later is just gone.
Yeah.
And I think we all deal with this electronic toxification, which actually we are toxified too. So, and it's totally out of control. I don't have kids. My frustration is, it's beyond that. I mean, and I think everybody experienced this. They are isolated with this. They text each other. No communication. I mean, this I'm really disappointed of this side effect of this, and I don't know how to deal with it. It's a pain because you really feel that you don't have a kid,
Right.
and it's frustrating.
Thank you. I think we could probably all share that frustration that we're kind of, how do we reach our kids when they're so engulfed in technology, in their phones, in their devices, and this is a part of our culture that we can't get away from. A few years ago, we could take away the phone, we could give them a dumb phone, so that whatever they call it, we could not have a phone at all, but I'll suggest that sometimes to the parents I work with, and the parents like, I can't take their phone, I need to get a hold of them. I need them to have a phone. And I think there's some truth to that. There's some cultural aspects of that, where we're at in our society at large. Unfortunately, it's not going away. It's only going to get stronger. We have to learn how to maneuver around it. Hopefully some of the things we talk about tonight and also next month will help that, but there's going to be no set way to get away from this. And if you figured it out and you have a good system, please let us know here tonight so you can teach us all. And teach me, please, because that's a big thing. And I think the other thing I really want to stress to start is with parenting, especially, more than any other topic I work with in the office, is there is no one way. There's what's right for you and your children may not be right for you and your child, may not be right for me and my children. I don't know there's not one answer for every single person in here and their kid's personality and your personality. My hope is to give you some principles, some ideas. You may completely disagree with me on some things, and that's okay. I've also learned over the years the best way to offend somebody is to challenge their parenting. But luckily I get paid to do that, so it's okay. They're a little more receptive to me, but I mean, how many have talked to friends, parents, or your peers, and you've said something, or your relatives about their parenting, and that's just a great way to ruin a relationship with a friend or a family member. And because we take it really personal, don't we? If somebody challenges how our kids are behaving or what we're doing, we take that personally, and we don't know how to respond to that. So it's a really delicate subject, even from my perspective as a professional. I know I've done this before, and like Rajani said, I've been here for about 4 years over each school year, and I'm sure I've offended somebody. I've had, parents in the class say, I totally disagree with that. I think that's poor advice. Okay. That's okay, and I'm going to give you permission to totally disagree with me on a principle or a topic. I won't be offended whatsoever. I just know it's worked for me as a father and also as a therapist in helping my clients. But I am open to suggestion and new ideas. All right, let's get back to the brain for a little bit. This will be perhaps a little more of I don't want to say boring, because the brain is fascinating, but it's not the meat of it. We just want to have an understanding of it. We as parents and teachers and everybody that works with adolescents gets frustrated. And this is what we see when we see the brain as a whole, the outer part, the gray matter. This gives us conscious thought and reasoning, which our adolescents don't have a lot of. And this is important because this part of the brain doesn't stop developing or really complete its development until what age? Yeah, mid-20s, you're right. 24 to 26, 25, I mean, again, everybody's different, but that mid-20s, science has now taught us, is when the cortex is finally finishing developing. And that's, again, where logic, where understanding, where knowing right from wrong, kind of, and being able to distinguish between the two, calculate, plan, all that stuff comes from this part of the brain. Consider consequences, and manage those impulses from the limbic system, all comes from the cortex, and that's not done developing here. So quite literally, our adolescents are incapable to manage things like we do. It doesn't mean we give up. It doesn't mean we say, well, all right, we just got to wait till they're 25 to start to worry about this. But hopefully we're a little more patient with them. We're a little more understanding when they're very emotionally unreasonable and we don't know, are they just being difficult? Are they just being little turds that we want to strangle? Or is there really a biological thing that's going on that they just can't process and comprehend things like we can? And so that's really kind of the very bare bone basics of brain development in adolescence. We're dealing with a high emotional state part of the brain that's developing and an under reasoning logical part of the brain. We'll talk more about that in a little bit with some analogies. Any thoughts, questions there? I want to make sure. What's that?
How do you handle this situation?
We'll talk about that. That's what this is all about. So excellent question. Okay. So emotion regulation. That's going to be the key, I believe, to communicating effectively with adolescents. And we're going to see this throughout tonight. We're going to spend a lot of time on emotion regulation, and predominantly our emotion regulation. And we'll talk about why that is in a moment. But here, having a scientific perspective on the biological challenges of adolescence will help you interact more objectively with your child, maintain your cool, and offer guidance that can improve his or her life. So that's really, again, really, really key. So we're going to spend some time. Now, sometimes we look at our kids as aliens. That they just are, what happened to them? Anybody ever, there's a great book called Happiness is a Serious Problem by Dennis Prager. Great little book, and he says in there it's about kind of different philosophies of life and how to be happy in general. It's just a good little book. But he talks about life philosophies, and he says he has a friend that maintains his cool with his adolescence by believing that at 13 aliens come down and extract their child's brain and puts an alien brain, in their head, and then leaves. And then when they turn, in their early 20s, it comes back and replaces it with its human brain again. And that's how Dennis Prager's friend stays calm, patient, and understanding when his adolescent is crazy and whatnot. And so sometimes we can do that little trick. I tell my kids all the time, in good humor, that they have an alien brain and I'm okay with their craziness sometimes. They get frustrated, but they laugh. So at a time when kids feel uncomfortable in his or her own skin, the last thing they need is for his unconditional support, his parents, to treat them like an alien. I like that quote. And even though we may think they're acting like an alien, we got to be really careful not to treat them like an alien, because they are really needing that unconditional love and support from us in a time when they are also almost just as frustrated as we are with them. They are with themselves, they are with the world, they are with us, they are with their friends. They're frustrated too. And we're not the only ones struggling here during this time of adolescence. They too are struggling mightily. And I think one thing we forget is our own adolescence and how difficult it was, what our relationship was like with our parents. And we didn't even have smartphones. And it was still difficult. And they still bugged us about whatever the device was for us.
I think the hard part is finding a fine line between unconditional support and parenting.
It is. Yeah. And that's an excellent point. Finding that fine line between unconditional support and parenting is big. And now here's the philosophy that you may agree with me or disagree with me, and that's okay, is I'll hear a lot of parents say, I'm not to be their friend, I'm their parent. I get that, and I think it's true to an extent. My personal approach to my parenting is I want to be my kid's best friend or my wife. I want to be their parent too, and I have to provide guidance and discipline and structure and all of that. But I do want to be their friend because we're talking about communication. And I don't know about you, but I'm a selfish parent. And when my kid has a problem or a struggle, who do I want them to go to? I want them to go to me. Again, I'm selfish. I don't want them to go to their friend's mom or dad. I don't want them to go to their teachers, their youth leaders. Now, if they do and they have a good support, awesome. My kids have some great teachers. They have some great youth leaders. And I am very grateful that they can. Because the reality is, I am their parent. And I could tell them one thing. You could tell your kids one thing. And it could be great, awesome advice. But are they going to listen to you? Sometimes and often not. Because why? You're their parent. They could hear the same exact advice from a friend's parent or a teacher, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. And they come home, oh my gosh, Miss So-and-so gave me this advice, and you're thinking, I've been telling you that for 3 years. Why is it so great now? So there's just this thing. Right.
I was just thinking that too. I was just thinking that.
So I'll give you some marriage counseling really quick. She said my husband does the same thing. It's universal. It's universal in marriages, it's universal in parenting. We don't like to take advice from the people close to us, most of us. Now, some of you may be awesome and really listen to your spouse, listen to whatever, or you listen to your parents as kids and you just took their advice. But in marriage counseling, I tell people all the time, if you want your spouse to do something different, have somebody else tell them it that they respect and trust, and they'll do it. You got to lower your ego, and you got to and say, well, no, it's not my idea, it's their idea. As long as it gets done, you're happy. Same thing with parenting. If you want your kids to do something and you know they have a mentor or, again, a friend's parent, a teacher that they respect, call them up, send them an email, something to say, hey, could you find a way to present this idea to Johnny? And when they do, it comes across as awesome advice. Sometimes, not all the time, but that is. So there is a balance. And I personally try to take the route of I want to be both. I want to be a parent that's the disciplinarian, and I want to be their friend. So when the real problems come in their life, I hope they come to me. At least that's my goal.
If you have a choice, which one would you be?
Which one? A
parent or a friend?
I don't want to choose. I want to be both. I really do. My personal approach is, if that board was erased, I would write on it. And this comes with communication too, is there's a balance between relationship and behavior. And those of you that have been here for some of my presentations, you've heard this concept. I'm always going to err on focusing on my relationship with my kid than focusing on their behavior. That's just me. My personality, my approach, my philosophy. It may not be yours, and that's okay. Now, there may be exceptions to every rule, but I'm probably going to tend to focus on relationship and friendship more than being the disciplinarian. This is all easier said than done, because when emotions are high, all the tools and skills we learn from therapy or whatever, lecture like this, goes right out the window, and we resort to what we do when we're angry and ticked, and it just gets ugly fast. But if we practice and we're aware and we try and we set our goals to do things a little differently, it will start to get better over time. I do promise that. That's right. Absolutely. And how many times? My wife has said that about her dad. She's like, oh my gosh, he is such a different grandpa than he was with me. We've seen it with our own dads and whatnot. They do. They get a little older, they get a little wiser, they get a little calmer, just probably not enough energy to get worked up, and they can send them home with us when they get squirrely. So that's the big thing, right? Okay, so we do have to look in the mirror. And that's what one of the challenges that I have for each of you tonight, is to be willing to look in the mirror and go, what can I do differently to improve the communication with my teen, not expecting them to learn all this stuff and do it. A lot of times when a parent brings in a disrespectful kid, or they're just having problems, I'll see the kid once or twice, and then I'll start asking the parent to come in. And that's usually one of my first standard things. The first session is letting the child, the adolescent, and the parent know the way I do therapy is, yeah, you can drop your kid off and I can work with him or her, but expect me to ask you guys to come in too and learn some skills and some tools so that you can look in the mirror a little bit. Because if it's not a joint effort, and even I believe a more so effort on your part, on my part as the parent, we're going to be in a lose-lose situation. I believe, and I have found that. And so a lot of times I'll just stop seeing the kid and just have the parents come in for a while and learn some skills, and things get better that way a lot faster than them expecting their teenager to have some epiphany and come home respectful after a couple of counseling sessions. I'm good, but I'm not that good. And I don't know any counselor with adolescents that is. And so we can ask ourselves some questions. One, yes or no, I know where my own emotions are coming from. So the therapist in me will ask people, well, what was your childhood like? How did your parents parent you? Were they yellers? Were they screamers? How did they model all of this stuff to you? Yes or no? I get myself to an emotional, stable place before I try to communicate with my teen. Big one. If your emotions are at a 9 or 10, their emotions that are at a 9 or 10, there's not going to be any communication. That I can promise you. Just impossible. Same thing with marriages. Yes or no? I focus on understanding what they are going through. We'll talk about this later. Am I really trying to understand what just happened? What just happened in the last 2 hours? What was going through his head that made him think, I wanted him to get killed in Afghanistan by suggesting the war? What was his story? How did he take it from here to here? If I understood the thought pattern, I'd probably go, oh, well, I get that. Now, that's not true, but I understand how you got there. Yes or no? I work hard at not getting defensive. That's a big one. Defensiveness is a big stumbling block to effective communication with our kids. And again, as parents, I believe it's our job to work at not getting defensive. Do I validate their feelings? We'll talk about that later. That's a big one. Okay, if you're looking at the handouts, I did notice, I do want to just say, if you're wondering, I don't see any of this stuff on the handouts. I did not provide any of those handouts in the packet. Rajani did, and so thank you. But I didn't, so don't, if you're frustrated going, I don't see where he's getting all this, I didn't provide those, even though there's some really good stuff and I looked through it. And some of this is on there, because it's universal. You can get it from me, you can get it from the book that I'm suggesting, you can get it from another counselor. Most of us are going to say pretty much the same principles, I hope. All right, emotion regulation. First of all, let's talk about where do our emotions come from. This is big. So, thoughts. Where do what's that? Oh, bless you. There you go. Where do our emotions come from? Is it there? Situations? Something happens, right? And it creates an emotion in us. What's some things our kids do that get our blood boiling, push our buttons? What are some examples that your kids do that you just, gets your, always listening to something. Can't function without life, without listening to music or whatever. And the phone. Huge frustration. And the list goes on, right, with that stuff. Good. What?
Get behind on homework.
Behind on homework. Good. Any? Lying. Big one. Any others?
Copy that.
What's that?
Copy that.
Copy that?
Talking back.
Oh, talking back. I said copy that one. Yeah, talking back, absolutely. And then our emotions drive what? Our emotions drive what? Our actions or reaction. We react or act accordingly to what level of intensity our emotions are. Now, I'm going to propose something that may be different. You may disagree with, and that's okay. But my proposition here is that predominantly situations or everything you just listed is not responsible to getting you angry or ticked, or we'll say it's 8 to 10 scale of anger. So then what is? It's really, I believe, our thoughts and perceptions about the situation. And this is true for our kids, for our spouse, for our work, for the drivers on the road. This is what I teach almost every day in some form or fashion, whether I'm working with a couple communication, whether I'm working with addiction, or whether I'm working with parenting, and anything that has to do with emotion, I want people to understand, where do these emotions come from? And again, if you've seen me present here, you've seen this. You've seen them, you draw it on the whiteboard, and you're like, oh, I've heard this already. This is really big though, and it's everything. But people, this is hard for people to take, because what does this mean? If our thoughts are predominantly responsible for our intensity of our emotions, what does that mean for us? not our kids' fault, it's us. We have to own our part in getting ourselves to an emotional state that is not effective communication. Now, I'll put anger on a continuum. Sorry, no whiteboard, but if I had over here, really angry, and I'll say ticked, then anger, then mad, then upset, then frustrated, then annoyed, and then neutral. And somewhere way over there is happy. Do what our kids do, those situations you all shared, does that naturally make us frustrated and upset? Absolutely. My proposition is, but what gets us from upset to ticked, where we're not communicating effectively, is our perceptions and thoughts about that. The kind of what I call the story in our head. So, and just like our children are the same. The story in his son's head when he went upstairs after hearing you could go to the Army, he spun a whole story that got him from having a good conversation with his dad to walking out saying he wasn't going to go to school anymore, and you're just like, whoa, that's how that happened. In that 2-hour period, he had a list of thoughts and perceptions that started building one upon the other. Did Dad mean this? He probably meant this and this. And it just went and exploded until he was like, my dad wants me dead. That's the story. That's the perception. It happens to us too. Maybe not so drastic as that, but they're disrespectful, they don't like me, they're just trying to be rude and get me angry, when probably a lot of that's not true. And the problem with all of this is, that's our side of it from the same situation. Our kid has a totally different process. And so we have the same situation, talking to his son. He's feeling one way, thinking, I just had a great conversation with my son. That was a good bonding experience. Awesome. He's feeling good and happy. And his son's up there just being hurt, thinking that his dad wants him to go to the war and die. All from the same situation. Therefore, it can't be the situation that gets us worked up. It's the story in our head predominantly. Does that make sense? Any thoughts or questions about that? Because this is one of the hardest things for people to really hold on to, because we don't want to be responsible for our emotions. We want our kid to be responsible for them.
I think part of it has to do with developed habits and behaviors.
Yeah.
I mean, even in adults, when you are driving and you make a simple mistake, there's the adults that are like, they put their hand up and they're like, sorry.
Yeah.
And then you have the other driver.
That's right.
You know, so those are, and that's an adult, you would assume they're over 20.
Probably.
And their cerebrum should be developed, but
Right.
yet
Yeah.
they have bad habits. So the habit should have been instilled in your children
Right.
as far as the respect part early on, yet but when they're teenagers, it could be social, emotional things that are taking place at home. So I kind of feel there's two categories. There's the shaping of behavior, what is respect at home, and then there is the emotional and things that happen with their friends and school. So I feel like there's two different topics right there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there is. And how their friend, again, could say the same thing to them. Hey, what did you think about the Army? They'd be like, hey, that could be a good idea. You know, they don't think their friend wants them dead. So it is. There are two aspects. Absolutely excellent comment. We just want to be really aware that we're dealing with two different stories and whatnot.
My experience has been that teenagers tend to catastrophize things, and they seem to always go to a negative perception rather than the opposite. So how do you change that?
Patience and teaching and trying to let them know there's another way to look at it. So the question there was, you know, teenagers tend to catastrophize and look at worst case scenarios, and you're right, they do. And they're not just going to wake up one day and go, I think I'll be optimistic, and I think I'll look at life in a happy lens. But we can, as parents, say, well, yeah, that could happen, maybe, but did you think about this? Or maybe this could be another scenario. We just kind of plant seeds. I look at parenting teenagers as we're professional gardeners. we're planting seeds continuously, hoping they take root, hoping they eventually blossom to some good things. But it's hard. And that's kind of how I would respond to that. And it's not going to work every time, but we know they are just kind of negative. My 14-year-old's favorite phrase right now is, "I don't care." She doesn't care about anything, is her phrase. And it could be friends, it could be this, it could be what we have for dinner, what we do here. I don't care. I don't care. It's just, she doesn't care. And so we're working with it. And my approach is sometimes to try to use humor when appropriate. Sometimes I can go overboard. And I get myself in trouble with my children trying to be humorous or sarcastic. And it's more damaging than good. But I try. Was there a hand over here? And then I'll get to you.
Well, one tip as a parent to parent, I like to use reverse psychology for the parent that said about their child that he interpreted that he wanted to get killed.
Yeah.
I would say, well, do you really think that all the parents sent their kids to the army to get killed? And then maybe that could get his brain. No, they did it, So sometimes reverse.
Sometimes. And timing is really important on that. Each individual child is really important. Some kids' sense of humor, some kids can take that and go, oh, okay, some kids would take it horribly. We just don't know which kid will take which one. But I try to be a humor guy. Sometimes it falls flat and it doesn't work at all. So other times it works okay. So another way to look at this idea is, okay, there's a comment by a parent. Again, thank you for your example. We're going to use it a lot tonight. It's just a really good classic example. If anybody wants to share another one, we can give them a break. But again, comment. Teen brain misinterprets as an attack, a threat, an insult. Couldn't have used a better example. Now this may not have happened necessarily. The teen overreacts. He did. Went off, took off. I don't know if the rest applies to you, but it can apply to us sometimes. They overreact. Then that starts to push our buttons, and we were maybe calm at one point, and then because of their overreactiveness, they push our buttons, then we start to overreact, and then they interpret that as maybe it is a literal attack, both verbally or physically, hopefully not, but then it just starts going round and round and round. And so that's the cycle. And I'm sure we have all experienced, I know I've experienced this, and I'm sure every parent in this room.
You experience it every day.
Probably, and some have.
Today, here's this, a radical story.
Right.
But then, as you're going through this cycle, I'm thinking, yep, that's what happened with homework today. Or that was what was going to happen with homework today. But I anticipated the cycle and stopped at the comment. He started to feel threatened, and we stayed in that zone up there in the beginning. The homework's not done, but at least we both have stayed in the emotionally regulated zone.
Right. And so if we can start to be good body language readers too, and we can start to see something's starting to be a little amiss with them, we can start to retract and go, wait a minute, how am I saying this? Again, look back in the mirror and go, can I present this a different way? Can I say this a different way that can help them not feel attacked? Sometimes we can say it the most kindest, loving, intentional way, and they still will interpret it poorly. But we do our best. I'm going to kind of go through these quickly because I want to get through their questions as well. Again, adjust expectation. This is the do's, how to help adolescents apply the brakes. It's normal for adolescents to act without thinking of the consequences, to react impulsively, and to display raw emotions and mood swings. We can't expect them to be adults when they're not adults. It doesn't mean we expect rude behavior and disrespect and those things. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying we have to give them some leeway. Example, maybe the eye rolling. If I tell my daughter to do something and I get an eye roll, I can, hey young lady, don't you do that, come back here and let's do this again. And I can get real throw my weight around as a parent and be like, I'm the authority figure, you're not going to disrespect me. But if she's just walking away and trying to avoid a conflict, roll your eyes at me. I don't care. You know, you're going to be fine. And that's just, again, my approach. Some people really get upset in this, but...
Yeah, that's what's really hard to let go of, the whole, I'm the parent and I'm the boss, so what I say goes in this situation, and then it took me a long time to step out of that and be like, he left the back door open when he went outside. I'm just going to go close. I'm not going to drag him back in here and just demand, because I would do that.
Right.
And then the next time, door slams open and just wide open.
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm just going to let this go and not, it's this whole thing about I'm the boss and you're not going to listen to me. You know, for my kid anyway, it just doesn't work at all. In fact, it's just a reverse effect that happens. He's like, oh yeah, well then I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So I have to like really, really pick the battles that I want to engage in.
I think we have the same son.
Yeah, you know, and I think that was really well said. Now, again, that's harder for some in some personalities. You get two type A personalities, dad or mom and the kid, and they want to go head to head and to show who's alpha in the house. You're going to have some fireworks.
Yeah, that's the problem too if the wife is not on the same page as me. And she said, "You go back there and make sure that happens." I can, but
yeah, right. You know, the whole sentence, which you might cringe when you hear it, but we've heard it a lot. We have to choose our battles with adolescents. It is. I believe it's a true statement. I have to choose my battles. I'm not going to get worked up over every little thing when ultimately they're doing pretty well. And so that's just me, though. You may approach it a different way, and that's okay.
But
if it's
in the case of the homework, I mean, if you don't go down that emotional roller coaster, the homework still doesn't get done.
Well, we'll see, because when I get home at 8:15,
Hopefully,
you know,
right.
it's not going to be done when I get home, I guarantee you. I'm
Not there.
not there. So when I get home, if it's not done, he's going to need to stop whatever he's doing when I walk in the door and do it. And but what happens is there's a certain hour where his brain just stops working and homework cannot be done after that hour. And at that point, it's just like, just go to bed.
Yeah.
there's so
And
much
he can
homework
get
to
up,
do.
I know, and then, but he may choose to get up at 5:30 tomorrow morning to get it done, which probably means I'm getting up at 5:30 tomorrow morning to help. But the point is, we saved the relationship. You know, okay.
No, that's good. As
You
long as it
know,
gets
but
done. Right.
and it's what this whole stopping the cycle today, I was thinking, the homework needs to get done. It's due tomorrow. It's on your calendar. I reminded you 3 times today. You're still playing your video game. You know, when do I say, I'm shutting down the computer, I'm taking the mouse away, I'm taking the phone away, do your poem analysis, you know? But I thought, well, you know, because I want my gentle reminders to make his cortex start functioning and for him to shut the computer off and do his homework because there's going to be a consequence, you know? So you choose, like you say, choose your battles. Well, this afternoon I chose not to battle, but when I get home at 8:15, pretty sure it's not going to go quite as smoothly as the afternoon went.
That's right.
But the other, and to have both parents on the same page is hard because my husband comes home, he's like, okay, get dinner, we're gonna get ready for Boy Scouts in half an hour. And I'm like, he goes, does each boy have their homework done that's due tomorrow? And I'm like, well, one of the assignments is done and yet poem's not. He's like, well, he starts marching down the hallway. I'm like, don't go there, you know? And then he goes, why? I go, because I've already been in there 4 times this afternoon, once per hour. And it's not going to happen in the next 30 minutes, and you're going to make it worse, and things are going to escalate. And then he's not going to want to go to Boy Scouts, and then, you know, and then he's going to stay home alone, and then he's going to stew about it, and then he's going to get mad because now he's got a brain freeze and he can't do his homework. I mean, this is...
You've got it down pretty pat. It is, and homework's a big complaint I get in the office, in schoolwork and academics. I often give it some thoughts that a lot of parents don't like. Again, it's only my approach. And my approach is, what happens if they don't do their homework? They get a bad grade. They maybe don't get to play on the team this week. You know, my kids are in sports, so if they don't get good grades, they're not playing. And their coaches are really strict with it. And I'm like, all right, if your grades fall, that's the natural consequence. And I've been lucky, they've done pretty good at keeping them up. I choose not to battle the homework battle. If they get a bad grade, that's on them. I'm not going to lose sleep over my kid getting a bad grade in school. There's a lot of ways to do that right, depending on where they're at.
Yeah, it's just it's not counterproductive anymore. It's
Right.
like 11 o'clock at night, my wife's still trying to get him to do this. It's like, it's not going to work.
I'm going to bed.
You sleep.
Right. So another big thing is examine your parenting style to determine if it is, one, permissive or authoritarian or structured. This is this author's 3 types. There's a lot of different words on the 3 major parenting styles. And so authoritarian is that iron fist, rarely works, long-term, definitely doesn't build relationships. Permissive, you can be a really fun parent while being permissive and let your kid do whatever they want. Usually ruins relationship too, because the overall underlying message of a really permissive parent that lets their kids do anything they want, what message does that send to most kids? Don't care. So that's where parenting is really hard, because you can enforce rules, they'll say they hate you for it, but at the end of the day, they also know you love them. And I've worked in juvenile detention centers, and that was a question I asked a lot of, what was your life like, what was going on? And most of them were from very permissive homes where they could do whatever they want, they could stay out as late as they wanted, they could hang out with who they wanted. And again, at the time, cortex isn't developed. They're not going to go, I should go home, it's 9:30. I should get to bed and get a good night's sleep. I'm going to go home, guys, see ya. No, if they don't have to be home, they're going to stay up till 2 o'clock, whatever, no matter what the consequences in the moment. But they also then come home and believe that mom and dad don't care. So really the structured parenting style from this author's point of view is the most effective. All right, 3, following the structured parenting approach, emphasize clear limits and enforcement of consequences in a careful and respectful manner. Practice lots of patience. It often helps to remember your own adolescent years. We talked about that. And then get support from other parents and friends. Loosen, but don't let go. I think there's a few that didn't get. That's all right. So here's another thing to do. I like acronyms. I'm a little cheesy. I teach my clients to love their kids and their spouses. This is as well in spousal communication too. What does this mean? First, you have to listen. You listen to them. If you're thinking about what your response is going to be or how you're ticked at them or what's going on, kids want to be listened to. I interview kids a lot and I say, what would you like your parents to do more of? This comes up a lot. I just want them to listen to me. But we think their ideas are crazy, we think they're irrational, and we want to shut them down as soon as they start talking. But if we can truly listen and listen past the things that we feel are irrational, that's going to help. But the most important thing with listening is we listen with the intent to understand them. This principle has been taught for a long time. The first time I read it was in the classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. He has this idea in his books. Understand those you're working with before they understand you. Stephen R. Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People took that as well as one of his major effective principles of life. Seek first to understand before you're understood. That can go a long way with our teenagers. If they feel heard and listened to, they're going to want to come to us more and talk to us. But if they feel shut down, we criticize their dumb ideas, we criticize things that we think is just silly. Oh, that's a dumb idea. You'll never be an astronaut. Pick something a little more practical. We just shut them down, and they're not going to want to talk to us. They're not going to want to communicate. And then validate their thoughts and their emotions. They have a right to their feelings. Even if they're ticked at us and they hate us, they have a right to do that. Validate that. Validate their frustration with us. Validate their sadness with their friends at school. And we may want to lecture and fix and be, well, you need to do this, this, and this. They don't want us to fix it. They might just need some validation and some understanding. And that's hard because as parents, we kind of also suffer from we know everything too, don't we? It's not just our teenagers that suffer from this problem. We're adults. We've been teenagers before. We've been through the school of hard knocks. We know we're bigger, we're smarter, we're older. Listen to us. sometimes we gotta lower that pride and that ego and validate what they're going through. Any thoughts on that? Or any questions or comments, anything going through your head that you'd like to share?
So just in situations like, say we want to go to a mall or we want to call friends over for a play date or something like that, they usually have an idea of what they want to do.
Right.
So I try to listen to what they want to do because they're older, but I don't know where to draw a limit on, is that going to be a good option? Sometimes at the end of the play date, they say they're bored because they didn't know what to do.
Right.
I could have offered ideas,
Yeah.
but I felt like maybe they wanted to try something. We'll just let them figure it out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen. So
Right.
how do you help?
I think every case is different, but I think it's not bad to offer suggestions. Oh, I need to repeat your question. So, how do you help when they come to you, and or they're doing something? They wanted to go to the mall. They want to do a play date, but then they're kind of bored, and you want to offer a suggestion, but you don't want to overstep. What do? I think it's okay to offer suggestions, or maybe ask. Would you like a suggestion? Text them. There you go. Hey, here's an idea. And we joked about that earlier. She says it. We do have to use their mode of communication more than maybe we are. Maybe we're using it too much too. I don't know. Don't be afraid to use social media to communicate with your kids. It'll get through to them. They'll hear it. They'll get it. It's different. We have to embrace it somewhat. There should be some limits and boundaries. We do need some face-to-face, absolutely. But and probably next month when we talk about self-esteem, we'll talk a lot about social media and how that plays a role in self-esteem in today's world, because that's a big thing. But don't be afraid to suggest. That would be my answer to that. They may not take it. Don't be offended if they don't, but you can offer it, right? Okay. Getting close here. The don'ts, I'm going to go through these. Some of them may be obvious. Don't tolerate abusive or disrespectful behavior. Working with the family, that the mom and dad, both of them, when they get heated, they really like to yell and swear at their kid. Kid swears at them. They're upset that he's swearing at them, but they swear at him. And I'm talking to mom, it's probably not the best thing. Well, it's so hard. They just make me so angry, and I just do it. Oh, okay. Well, if you want more disrespectful behavior, well, keep doing that, or learn how to curb, again, regulate your own emotions. If you escalate, you yell, you swear, you criticize, they're going to do it back.
What if you don't swear, but maybe she does?
So, excellent question. That's the hard part, isn't it? When you're doing really well. Well, every kid's different. I think one, you shut down the communication. We're not going to talk about this right now. We're going to do this later. Don't be afraid to walk away and go, we'll talk about this when you can be respectful, or what with spouse, or if you don't have, if there's not a significant other, within yourself, with the help of someone, what are the consequences to that type of behavior? In that moment, you may not necessarily be, oh, here's what's going to happen, and come back later. Hey, this was really inappropriate and disrespectful. Because of this is what's going to happen. Or set up kind of contracts when things are going well. Hey, we got to stop the disrespect. If you swear at me or to me, here's what the consequence is. Kind of set it up before so they know what's coming. Ideally, they get to be a part of that consequences. And so there's no argument. Well, there will always probably be an argument, but you can say, well, you agreed. This is what happens when you're disrespectful to me. Just most important thing is, don't raise to that level and don't do it right back. Again, we have to be the ones to try our best to be reasonable. Don't lose your temper, even when your teen does. Don't get caught up in the trap of destructive verbal battles, and don't make mountains out of molehills. Okay, so that's a little bit of kind of what to do. Let's look at these questions here. How to break the silence. Classic communication skills. Try not to ask one-word questions. How was school today? I mean, that is just, they're not going to go off. Good is a reasonable response to a one-word question. Hey, anything, I don't, that's going to be a one-word one too. What exciting thing happened to them? They may say nothing, and you just may not get around it. Just try to formulate your questions to give them an opportunity to talk more. But don't be offended if they still just say, fine, good, okay. You'll have your moments to talk about their day. Hopefully you have built-in opportunities to communicate. Dinner, rides places. Yes, they have their earbuds in, set rules and guidelines, no phones at the dinner table. But dinner is a different thing. A lot of families aren't having dinner together. And that typically is a really good time to be able to communicate, and where parents and kids set their rules and don't bring their phones to the dinner table. I mean, if we were brutally honest, how many of us look at our phones, answer texts, look at social media at dinner, when we're at a restaurant with our spouse or our kids? We have to model some of this stuff too and put down our phones. Kids are not the only ones these days that have a problem with phones. I hope you all know that. I'm pretty sure you do. Just do a social experiment next time you go to dinner at a restaurant. Look around at all of the people that are on their phones, supposed to be on dates, supposed to be with their families. I'm talking adults, not kids, on their phones and their devices. This is an epidemic that reaches far beyond adolescence, in my book. So let's model that as well. That too, yeah, everywhere.
One, in response to the breaking the silence question, I found that my kids are pretty different. My 11-year-old, he likes to talk right before bed. But my 14-year-old, or he just turned 15, he likes to talk right when he walks in the door from school. So I make sure that I set aside my schedule to be there those 2 times a day to have the chance to connect with my boys. Yesterday I got a mouthful after school. Today I'm hungry, what can I eat? And that was it. But that's okay, because yesterday I got a 20-minute conversation. So if you know, it's like the love languages kind of thing. If you tune in and you can figure out that, maybe if there's that kind of opportunity for you with your kid, then you can capitalize on that if your schedule allows.
Yeah, timing is a big thing, knowing that your kid's window of opportunity to open up and speak, and every kid's different. And that's part of the hard part about being a parent. We have to be, I believe, we have to be the flexible one. In crises, they may need a talk at midnight, and we may have to forego some sleep and not just go to bed. If it's trivial stuff and they're just trying to avoid going to bed, that's a different story. Go to bed, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Hey, Dad, Mom, I really need to talk about something, and you can tell something serious. I don't care what time of day is, you talk to them. And so finding opportunities to break the silence on their terms, not our terms, would be my best answer as well for that. Eye rolls, we kind of talked about that. Pick your battle. Depends. I can't tell you to do everything. Again, if I tell my kid to go scoop poop and they eye roll as they're going to go pick up the dog crap, I'm okay with it, as long as they're doing it. Go do it. Eye roll all you want. I don't want to do it either. Go. Fine. They know everything. That's okay. They do in their mind. So do you. It's okay. Let's just work with it and let them think they do. Teach them opportunities, timing to teach, opportunities to know that they don't. What's that?
In time, they'll realize
they do.
They don't.
And that comes mostly when? When they have their own teenagers, right? And so respect, I do want to get to that one. I think that is big, because you can't just there's got to be some natural consequences to respect. And I think working with spouse, the other big thing about any kind of parenting, key is to have you and your spouse on the same page. Working with a couple and their kid, and I watch the spouses interact and their sarcasm towards each other and their belittling of each other, I'm thinking, oh, no wonder the kid's having struggle, We have to look at our relationship with our significant other, whether we're together or whether we're divorced and co-parenting. And if that's a struggle, then that's going to affect our kids' behavior, therefore our communication with them, their emotions. There's so many things that go into communicating with teens that we don't think of. And I think those are two big ones. You know, I told one parent, specifically the father, if he couldn't have an effective co-parent relationship with his ex-wife, he couldn't expect to have a good communication relationship with his kids. And at first he was really ticked and he didn't come back for 6 months. But eventually he came back around and he's really trying to mend that relationship with his ex-wife, and it's showing he's having a better relationship with his kids. So whether that's ex-spouse or even a current relationship, that's a component. If we're having discord, or if they see us communicate poorly with each other as spouses or significant others, they're going to model us. If they hear us yelling at each other, swearing at each other, disrespecting each other, even if we're doing it behind closed doors, and they can hear us, their ears perk up when that door closes. And they are going to be listening. And if they hear it, they're going to model it. So that's another aspect that we don't talk a lot about in communicating with teens. But have rules, have already set consequences. I like natural consequences. If there's disrespect, this is what's going to happen. I don't know what that is. Everybody's different. But set that up together with the help of your significant other or a counselor or whoever. And that's kind of along with being kind and boundaries. Sometimes we got to be the parent, and sometimes we got to be the friend. And we have to learn to know when the time is different to be which role. And that's hard. I can't tell you. Be a parent here, be a friend here, be this. There's no black and white situation. We have to be able to read that and do our best, and we're going to fail sometimes. We're going to pick the wrong role at times. I know I have. Do not be afraid to apologize to your kids. That's another huge communication piece that I would say is communicating with parents, as parents to our kids, is if we do something wrong, don't be afraid to go to your kid and say, I messed up. I really overreacted there. My bad. I'm really, even if they did too, and we don't want to say, but you did too. Oh, but I wouldn't have if you would have. We can't go there. That's not going to work. They're going to shut down like that. And so, yeah, we have to be willing to apologize our weaknesses as well. Awareness of their actions. Somebody remind me what that one meant. How? Yes, thank you. Teaching moments, not in the moment probably. That I would never, rarely. I don't like to use absolutes. Not in that moment. Do you know how you're coming across right now? Let it happen, let it settle. Later, when you're having a good moment, you can talk, hey, I wanted to let you know when this happened. This is how you came across. And then maybe teach them when they're teachable. When the emotions are high, they're not teachable. So that's kind of what I would do there. Use it as a teaching moment later, when things are well and you're on a good terms with each other for that second or moment or whatever it may be in life. And then they can maybe go, oh, okay. Hopefully. Repetition, they'll learn it over and over.
So one thing I see with my child is she just cannot do small talk. And that bothers me the most when you have visitors, like family visiting. And is through that 1 week or 2 weeks, they have no conversation at all with anyone. Is it common, or is it something you can work?
My personal opinion, the biggest culprit of that is technology. We're seeing an epidemic, I believe, in teens and the rising generation not being able to communicate with other people. Providing as many opportunities for them to communicate with adults is ideal. I'm a fan of jobs. I'm a fan of as soon as they can turn 16, they're out, fast food, grocery store, wherever they can get a job with human interaction. I know that's difficult with sports and school, but with this, it's making it really difficult for kids to communicate effectively with human beings face to face. So giving any opportunity and every opportunity for them to get that skill is really big. And that's, I mean, activities, extracurricular activities, maybe church community, whatever. Work is a big one when they get to that age, but as many opportunities, you can volunteer, whatnot, if that makes sense.
Volunteer, you just said that, but what if they don't want to?
Yeah.
Because you can't really do that anymore.
So how do you make them be social? It is hard. I think, again, you got to know your kid. You can push. Because some kids can definitely be pushed and forced to do something that they know is not they don't want to, but it's good for them and they eventually like it. Working with a 17-year-old young man, and another epidemic we're seeing is they don't want to get their license. I don't know if you're having that problem, but it's not as big a deal as when we got our license. I mean, I don't know about you, the day I turned 15 and a half, I got my permit. The day I turned 16, I got my license. It was what I looked forward to my whole life. Now, majority are so many, I don't care. My friend drives, I can go with him. No big deal, right? Uber, yeah, they'll take Uber. I mean, there's just no motivation. Dad says, no, you're getting your license. He made him. Later he said, I'm really glad he did. Not gonna happen every time, but I think there can be some force. If it starts to ruin the relationship, I think we have to back off. But we provide as many opportunities as we can for those social.
You know, there's also these teen conversation starter cards that you can get online. And a lot of parents that I've talked to, they put them in a jar during dinner time. And then they're open-ended questions on various topics teens deal with. And then that's an icebreaker kind of, every day, just everybody rotates, even the parents, pick the question, and you kind of make it fun and engaging, and little by little, they may not open up the first few weeks, but then everybody starts talking.
Oh, but my son's too cool for that.
Yeah.
That's what he would say.
And you just push it. Sometimes you push those conversations and you let them be awkward and you be vulnerable and you talk about stuff. I think that's the other thing when it comes to communicating. We have to be vulnerable as parents. We have to be willing to talk about our feelings. We have to be willing to talk about our day. They may not care, but that's okay. We still can share it with them. We can still express some things, what we're going through, and we model communication with them. They at least see an opportunity to talk and oh, mom and dad, they're willing to talk, especially us dads. We don't like to talk about feelings in our day. We're kind of one-word answer guys too, people, and a lot of us. We have to be willing to share our thoughts and feelings with our kids if we want them to share their thoughts and feelings with us. And the other thing I think is being genuinely interested in their lives. A lot of kids do not feel that their parents are genuinely interested in their lives. So that's another big thing I could ask and share is what they tell me is they want you to be interested in their friends, in their sports, in their school, and this and that to an extent. Not too much, but you want to know what's going on with your kids and who they're with and what their interests are. I know there's a lot more we could talk about. It went hour and a half goes really fast, so I apologize. Please.
So when you said about we talking to them, I have a 19-year-old and 14-year-old. My older one is a son, the younger one is a daughter. So they both like to ask me how my day was, and I tell them. But when I ask them, they don't answer. I am very I express
nice.
And everything, but they don't do the same thing when I ask them, even though I tell about my day. But I appreciate them asking me though.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Keep doing it. Don't expect them to be really, hey, mom, dad, let me tell you about my day. They're just not going to. I think lower that expectation that they're going to just want to share all their thoughts, hopes, and dreams with you at this point. They're not. And that's okay. But the fact that you ask each day, they'll remember. And they'll like it eventually.
I just had another thought about the breaking the silence and what you're talking about and what you're asking about. My 15-year-old really is interested in what's going on in the world. So sometimes at dinner we might talk about something in the news. I mean, you have to pick and choose, but like, okay, let's do the like kneeling at the NFL games, okay? Like that one, you can bring it up, and it ends up opening up tons of conversation, and now it's no longer about the football players, it's about what you feel about that, and what do you think they're talking about, and what would you do, and you know, and it's kind of like that jar idea, but it's a little bit more relatable and interested in something that he wants to, because if you sometimes, we have the jar, sometimes you figure out the jar and you're like, I don't want to answer this question, I don't know what my dreams are 5 years from now, you know, it's like, but I have an opinion about kneeling,
Right.
you know, and like, or we get it off Facebook, you know, you get all these extra little stories on Facebook, or like with the group, you know, when you find out about this, you know, one of the teachers that he had before is dying of cancer, and so we started talking about that, and then we started talking about his family, and what do his kids think, and what do, you know, look at the community, and how they came together, and, you know, then you're like, well, how do you get them to volunteer if they don't want to volunteer? Well, like, all of a sudden, now they're feeling outside their own self, you know, they're thinking about somebody else that they cared about, and it, for us, it can open up that conversation, and it's not, they're not sharing exactly what happened in biology today, but they are starting to think outside of themselves. I mean, my kids would never ask me how my day was, so you got that. But you know, sometimes in a roundabout way, you can end up getting more out of them when they don't feel like they're talking about themselves.
Yeah, you really got to put in the hours, and we talked about earlier, when they're ready, I have to be available for that.
Yes.
Even if I've like worked a double shift and I'm on location shooting something really late, and I come home and it's 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and he says, hey, I want to show you this music video. And his thing is these music videos. And a lot of the time he wants my reaction. He wants to see what I think of this music video. Without him, he's not going to come to me, hey Dad, let's start talking about stuff. But he's going to be like, I'm going to let you into my world 2.5 minutes at a time with these videos.
In his room.
Yeah, and he'll be showing me these videos, and I'll be like, oh, that's a really great Marilyn Manson video with the blood and all that. You know? I mean, because he's in a dark place right now, so all these videos he watches are really horrific, dark content. But when I was a kid, we had, you know, Van Halen, and you know, there were pretty bad bands back then as well. But I'm like, if you spend enough time doing this, and now it's coming up on midnight and stuff, and now something, make him talk about something. Okay, now we're talking about other things that are more normal to me. But I just kind of like, it's like I have to take it. I gotta like sit here and watch all these things.
It's that
and,
patience here in his life. You know, like not another music video.
But like this scene from this horror film, I think was really shot really cool. We put the camera there. I'm like, yeah, that's great.
Excellent. One more, and then we'll close because I know we're getting over.
Daughter, that they get into arguments sometimes, and then it gets very loud and goes out of control. As an other parent, I try to be gentle and listen to them. But then as a mother, I think I'm always biased towards my daughter. So in this scenario, what do I typically do? Do I support one of them or just keep quiet and watch?
Say the question again.
So when there's an argument
Right.
between the daughter and the dad,
Right.
and then it goes out of control. As another parent, what is my role there?
Argument between a child and another parent. How do you step in? That's touchy. Hopefully you and your husband have already a plan, maybe. That would be ideal. You know, you never want to demean the other parent in front of the child. That would be one thing I would say. If you disagree, you talk about it offline. Kind of let it unfold, long as nobody's hitting anybody and nobody's swearing at each other, you know, and it's just a disagreement or whatnot. I would let them figure it out. If you had a strong opinion about it, offline, hey, I disagree with this. This is how I think we should handle it. And then you talk about it offline, not in front of the kid. That's just my approach, if that answers that. You're welcome. Last comment on what we were talking about of listening to them and opening up about especially big topics, political topics, this topic, maybe religious topics. Caution not to criticize their beliefs and their opinions about it. They're growing up, they're starting to develop their own ideology, and it may be different from our family values, your political beliefs, your religious beliefs. If you put them down for thinking a certain way or about a certain social topic that's out there, they're going to shut down. You can value their opinion, validate how you can have a difference opinion. Hey, I look at this differently. You have your opinion, I have mine, but thanks for sharing. I would be really careful. I've had kids come in and really talk about how they try to share their thoughts and they just get hammered on because we hate Trump, or we like Trump, or we don't, and we do. And it's just like they all of a sudden don't have a voice. And so let them have their thoughts and their opinions. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.